Good evening. Welcome to California Today. I'm Liang Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's stories. Bank stocks tumbled on Monday following the recent Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Investors are now on high alert for similar issues at other banks. NTD spoke to an economics professor to find out more about what happens after a bank collapses and what it means for future economic outlooks. More on the after effects of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank collapses. Bank stocks tumbled yesterday on worries about what's next to break. Investors are on high alert for banks with similar issues. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the fallout from the second and third largest bank failures in U.S. history.
Banks below those deemed too big to fail saw enormous pressure on Monday. Shares of First Republic Bank took a nosedive, dropping 60% in pre-market trading. PacWest tumbled 35% in the pre-market session. Western Alliance had their shares plummet by over 80%, their largest one-day drop ever. They climbed a bit during the day to close down 47%. Charles Schwab's stock fell 23% during Monday's trading session, but regained some ground, closing down 11%. That's despite the bank's assurances of being in healthy conditions. Shares of other regional banks and financial firms are also stumbling, signaling continued unease despite the aggressive federal response announced Sunday to protect depositors. FDIC employees assured concerned customers lined up outside of Silicon Valley Bank headquarters in California that their money was safe.
Feel free to transact business as usual. It's just we ask for a little bit of time because of the volume.
But many clients weren't taking any chances.
We're here to see if we can extract the money quickly.
No, I'm going to clear it out and learn my lesson, and we're not going to put the money all in one place.
According to the Mortgage News Daily, 30-year fixed mortgage rates dropped to just under 6.6% on Monday. The housing market could see more buyers if the trend continues. The rates are influenced by the 10-year Treasury yield, which has dropped due to the recent bank failures. U.S. inflation data due late Tuesday could inject more market volatility, even if investors see the Fed prioritizing financial stability. The Federal Reserve is investigating Silicon Valley Bank to find out how regulators, including some feds, missed the financial storm. Their review is set to be publicly released on May 1st. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
In the wake of a rapid collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, many questions remain unanswered. Who else is responsible? And what will it mean for the future of interest rate? So joining me now is Matthew Faulkner, the Assistant Professor of Economics at the San Jose State University. Professor, you have been teaching at the center of the Silicon Valley. You're very familiar with the Silicon Valley Bank, and we all know what happened to it last week. But in retrospect, doesn't the Fed bear some of the responsibilities too? First, for keeping interest rates near zero for nearly a decade, and then went on a rampage with interest rate hike to curb the runaway inflation. Isn't that the cause for banks to invest heavily in treasury bonds to suffer huge losses?
Yeah, it's hard to point fingers at the Fed specific to your statement. Yeah, there may be, this probably should have been happening gradually over the past, and it didn't, and it happened really, really fast here. But it was more also the startup community. I'd say the one thing the government did well, though, is they acted fast. So versus the 2008, it took a long time to get any money to these banks, these financial institutions, so they kept failing and struggling, where they acted very, very fast here. And I think that was a big positive to say, we're going to make sure the depositors who put their money in banks to be safe, not because they think they're going to lose it all, we're going to make sure they get all their money back, which is kind of unprecedented at this point. And then we'll worry about the losses later by assessing a tax to the entire banking system to cover that loss, not the taxpayers.
Yesterday, President Biden came out and assured the American public that the American banking system is safe. And the bailout and backstop of the depositors will strictly come out of the insurance of FDIC. Is that true, that nothing will be transferred to the taxpayers?
Yeah, so in its direct form, no, it appears there'll be no taxpayer money, none of our money used to spend this. So what it kind of was is the government said, we'll front all the money just so that everyone that had a deposit can get that deposit back. But once we unwind Silicon Valley Bank, whatever we can sell it for, its assets for, its pieces for, if there's any loss there, rather than using our government money, the taxpayer money, we're going to say all the banks have to chip in some piece, some fee from all the banks to cover that loss. The question goes, and some people have raised concerns of, okay, so it's not directly taxpayer money, but are banks now going to pass that cost, that new fee they've just had to pay to cover this loss, on to the customers in new fees? And the answer is they might. I think in the biggest way, though, it's going to be a very small amount if it was. But most banks also want to satisfy their customers and do right by their customers. So I don't think we'll feel it. I don't think it'll be anything that we will go, wow, I'm paying directly for the Silicon Valley Bank. I don't think it'll be a big number like that.
By doing the bailout, is the Fed sending a message to the public that there is no consequence or risk of running a bank? No matter how much trouble you get into, the Fed will always have your back.
This is a little bit concerning, or more curious as to what precedent does this set for the future. And that is, the FDIC was, hey, up to $250,000 if a bank fails for whatever reason, you're guaranteed, you probably would get more than that, but you're guaranteed to get that without a doubt, insured by the government. And now that number is, in this case, is unlimited. It's whatever you had in there, you're getting back without question. And that goes, well, if or when this happens again in the future, hopefully a long time from now, are people going to point back to say, well, you did it then, why don't you do it again? And I believe that precedent is very interesting of what laws might change around the FDIC, what regulations might go in place. I do find that to be a very interesting question of what precedent this will set.
So how would the collapse of SVB affect future interest rates?
This is a tough one to predict. Obviously, the Fed's been very diligent in making sure that they want their interest rate. They want the interest rate to continue to increase. They want to combat inflation. They want to probably make up for what hadn't been done over the past decade. And if I had to take a guess, I'd say that they will slow down in the short term, the interest rate hikes, if they hike it at all. But they aren't going to slow that down forever. They'll let maybe this cool off and then or raise it a little lower and then get back on the track of where they were going. So I do believe there could be a change or an alteration, but I don't believe this changes the long-term goals of the Fed.
Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Matthew Faulkner. We're going to take a short break, but here's a look at what we got for you when we come back. Storms continue to bring rain and snow to the state, flooding farmlands and coastal towns. Residents living in flood-damaged areas are asking for more help as soon as possible. State Senator Scott Wiener launched an exploratory committee to consider running for U.S. Congress. He has his sights set on Representative Nancy Pelosi's House seat. And the famous bald eagle pair living in Southern California recently lost their eggs to local scavengers. This happened after the two birds left the eggs unattended. That and more on California Today. Welcome back to California Today. I'm your host, Lang Zhang. The storms have impacted coastal areas like Monterey the most. The season's 11th atmospheric river has flooded farming communities, and its residents are asking for help as soon as possible.
Residents of the flooded Central California coastal community of Pajaro in Monterey County are hoping to get help as soon as possible. Parts of the community remain inundated with floodwaters after a levee on the Pajaro River failed late Friday night, sending dark brown waters rushing through neighborhoods and forcing emergency evacuations into the morning. On Salinas Road, Frida Gonzalez and Maria Martinez have jobs as seasonal farm workers, but they opted to stay at their apartments with their families.
Well, it has been a little difficult. There's been a little bit of panic because the river levee broke and it flooded here. We couldn't leave. They came to evacuate us, and we decided to stay here because we felt safer here than to go to an evacuation center. But it's also been a little difficult with the children, too.
The largely Latino farm worker community is already struggling to find food with so many roads and businesses closed in the storm's aftermath. The Gonzalez and Martinez families have no water at their apartment, but they still have bottled water for drinking and cooking. They estimate they have 2 or 3 days more worth of provisions before they might have to leave.
More than anything, the message I want to send is that they need to support us with water. As I said, if it's contaminated, they can bring water here to the community. And we need more security because there are people that are robbing homes. This is another reason why we didn't leave. There is a lot of vandalism. We ask for more security. We ask for more support with water. And most important, food for the children.
Officials said the Pajaro River's first levee rupture grew to at least 400 feet since it failed late Friday. More than 8,500 people were forced to evacuate, and about 50 people had to be rescued as the water rose that night. Built in the late 1940s to provide flood protection, the levee has been a known risk for decades and had several breaches in the 1990s. A section had emergency repairs in January. It would cost $400 million to rebuild, which will start in the next few years. The floods have become a frequent occurrence in California this year, with a string of storms slamming the coast since late December. Mandatory evacuation orders remain in effect for residents in 10 California counties.
A California state senator is exploring the idea of running for Nancy Pelosi's seat in the 2024 House elections. Pelosi is now in her 19th term for her district's House representative, and was first elected to Congress in 1987.
Earlier this month, Democratic State Senator Scott Wiener announced that he would be launching an exploratory committee to consider running for Nancy Pelosi's House seat in the 2024 elections. But Pelosi's office commented that she has filed for re-election next year. A spokesperson said, quote, Speaker Emerita Pelosi plans to serve her entire term in Congress, representing the people of San Francisco. And in order to help win back the House for the Democrats, she has filed for re-election. Many Democrats say Wiener's move is too soon. Pelosi's popularity is at an all-time high, with 75% of her district voting for her. But other experts say Wiener could be a game-changer. Jane Napoli told the California Globe, quote, If Wiener enters the race against Pelosi, it would be her stiffest competition since her initial special election win in 1987. He's extremely popular in the city, too, especially amongst the lefter-leaning crowd. Problem is, Pelosi is popular, too, and has the sympathy vote still going for her with her husband. That can still be strong in the primary. Earlier this year, Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein announced her retirement at the end of her current term. Democratic congressional members Katie Porter, Adam Schiff, and Barbara Lee have already entered the Senate race, which has opened up their long-time held seats.
Uber and Lyft can continue treating their California drivers as independent contractors. A state appeals court ruled yesterday to uphold a voter-approved law called Proposition 22. That means drivers of companies like Uber and Lyft are not entitled to benefits like paid sick leave and unemployment insurance in the state. Proposition 22 exempted app-based drivers from a state law known as AB 5. AB 5 makes it difficult to classify workers as independent contractors instead of employees. Companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash spent $200 million on a campaign to make sure Proposition 22 would pass. A lower court ruling in 2021 said it was illegal. Yesterday's ruling reversed that decision. The court also ruled that the companies cannot stop their drivers from joining a labor union. That would allow them to collectively bargain for better working conditions. A man has pleaded guilty for his role in a major drug trafficking conspiracy. The Department of Justice says he ran a Mexican trafficking organization for several decades.
In a San Diego federal court, a narco-trafficker pleaded guilty on Wednesday to international cocaine trafficking conspiracy. Court documents say that 70-year-old Raul Flores Hernandez, also known as El Tio, has led a massive drug trafficking organization since the 1980s. The organization was based in Mexico's Jalisco state that arranged for cocaine to be transported from Colombia, Peru, and Bolivia to Mexican ports. The drugs were then smuggled into the United States by land across the U.S. border. Mexican authorities arrested Flores Hernandez in July 2017 at the request of the United States. He was extradited to the U.S. in February 2021. According to a press release from the Department of Justice, Flores Hernandez pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to distribute 5 kilograms or more of cocaine, knowing that it would be imported into the United States. Flores Hernandez is scheduled to be back in federal court on June 14th for sentencing. He faces a maximum penalty of life in prison.
The famous eagle pair living in Southern California recently lost their eggs to some other local birds. While the loss of the eggs is sad news, the organization that operates the live stream of the eagle family say they look forward to observing what's next for the 2 eagles.
The bald eagle pair, Jackie and Shadow, have been tending to their nest and 2 eggs since January. But on Wednesday morning, Shadow returned to the nest to discover that their 2 eggs were no longer there. Friends of Big Bear Valley, which operates a live stream of the eagle family, said the pair likely realized that their current eggs were not going to hatch. So earlier this week, Jackie and Shadow left their eggs unattended for 2 days, and some local ravens found them and ate them. Shadow's Wednesday morning visit was his first since the ravens ate the eggs. He stared at the nest bowl for a few minutes before flying to a nearby perch tree where Jackie was sitting. Friends of Big Bear Valley wrote on its YouTube page, Jackie and Shadow were definitely processing something in a different way than they had been, and not simply moving on to normal daily activities. Just like when your dog leaps up or wags his tail to greet you, their behavior changes according to the situation. According to the organization, Jackie's first egg usually hatched around day 38. This year, her eggs are long past that time. Friends of Big Bear Valley says its team will continue to observe and learn what's next for the eagle pair.
Now let's check in with NTD's Tyler Castillo for today's Sports Roundup.
Welcome everyone, I'm Tyler Castillo and I'm taking you through the California Today Sports Roundup.
Klay Thompson helped Golden State build a big lead with a 33-point first half. Stephen Curry and Jordan Poole chipped in with 23 and 20 points respectively. And the Warriors survived a Phoenix rally to win in San Francisco. Thompson finished with 38 points for the Warriors, who won their 8th straight at home as they prepare to embark on a 5-game trip with the hopes of snapping an 8-game road losing streak. Phoenix's Devin Booker scored 32 points and DeAndre Ayton put up 27 points with 12 rebounds. Chris Paul added a game-high 11 assists to complement 11 points as the Suns lost their 2nd straight after a 4-game winning streak. Warriors 123, Suns 112. Javon Hargrave has reached an agreement on a 4-year, $84 million deal that includes $40 million guaranteed upon signing with the 49ers. Since coach Kyle Shanahan and general manager John Lynch arrived in 2017, the Niners have made the defensive line their top priority. So it's no surprise the Niners pursued the best defensive tackle on the market in Hargrave. In landing Hargrave, the Niners can pair him with Bosa and lineman Arik Armstead. There's still some work to do in the secondary, but San Francisco's defense was number 1 in the league last year and has a chance to even be better in 2023 with Hargrave on board. It's an added bonus that Hargrave's departure weakens the Eagles, a team the Niners figured to be battling for the NFC crown for the next few seasons. Adding on to their expenditures, the 49ers agreed to a 1-year deal with former Carolina Panthers quarterback Sam Darnold. He bolsters the 49ers' depth at quarterback with Jimmy Garoppolo's exit to the Las Vegas Raiders and both Brock Purdy and Trey Lance returning from injuries. Darnold, 25, took a step last season toward rebuilding his career that had been on a downward spiral since being selected with the 3rd pick of the 2018 draft. He went 4-2 over the final 6 games for the Panthers after being activated from injured reserve, threw 7 touchdowns to 3 interceptions and rushed for 2 touchdowns. It was a stark contrast from the player that went 13-25 in 3 years with the Jets, throwing 45 touchdown passes to 39 interceptions after a stellar college career at USC. The 49ers rounded off their early signings by re-signing veteran center Jacob Brendel to a 4-year deal. A Pro Bowl alternate, Brendel also drew interest from the New York Jets, according to a source. The 30-year-old took over the 49ers starting center in 2022 and started every game, posting a pass block win rate of 91% and a run block win rate of 72.3%. The Los Angeles Rams have agreed to trade star cornerback Jalen Ramsey to the Miami Dolphins for a 2023 third-round pick and tight end Hunter Long. The trade will be processed on Wednesday when the 2023 league year officially begins. Ramsey has 3 years remaining on that contract. As part of the trade, the Dolphins agreed to guarantee the next 2 seasons on Ramsey's deal. Ramsey, a 3-time All-Pro and 6-time Pro Bowler, is largely considered one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL and joins another former All-Pro in Dolphins cornerback Xavier Howard. Miami has aggressively built its roster over the past year, also trading for All-Pro wide receiver Tyreek Hill and Pro Bowl linebacker Bradley Chubb. Jimmy Garoppolo is finally out of San Francisco and ready to start the next phase of his career wearing the Raiders' silver and black. Garoppolo agreed to a 3-year, $67.5 million deal, including $34 million guaranteed. He will be reunited with Raiders coach Josh McDaniels, who served as the Patriots' offensive coordinator during Garoppolo's 3 years in New England. Garoppolo spent the past 5+ seasons with the 49ers after they acquired him in an October 2017 trade with the Patriots. Upon arrival, Garoppolo led the Niners to 5 straight wins to close that season, earning him a 5-year, $137.5 million deal that at the time made him the highest paid player in the league. In his time in San Francisco, Garoppolo threw for 13,599 yards and 82 touchdowns with 42 interceptions, while completing 67.6% of his passes. In his 63 starts, including playoff appearances, the Niners went 44-19. Garoppolo missed 30 games with various ankle, shoulder, thumb, and knee injuries after becoming the 49ers starter.
And thank you for tuning in for the Sports Roundup for today.
That's all we've got for you tonight. We would like you to join us again on California Today every weekday at 8:30 p.m. Make sure to check out our broadcasts on our California Today webpage. You can find it at ntd.com/California-today. You can also find all of our top latest clips there, ready to share with friends and family. Send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, or through our email, california.today@ntd.com. I'm Ling Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.